Hi guys, welcome to this tutorial on Remains by Simon Armitage, one of the poems in the AQA's Power and Conflict collection. So a bit of key context for you. This poem is from The Not Dead. This is based, a collection of poems based on Armitage's interviews with ex-soldiers. If you have a look on YouTube, you'll find a really fascinating, very poignant documentary based on this, and you know you'll see a reading by one of those deeply traumatized soldiers. It's really sort of powerful to watch. I'd really encourage you to do that. So based predominantly around kind of the conflict in Iraq and with strong sort of tones and themes around PTSD. There's also connections to Hamlet and Macbeth. So for those of you interested in a bit of wider reading, there's some areas to start with. Okay, Remains as a title is polysemic in that it has two meanings here. Remains as in just something that is left behind, but equally remains as in human remains, a body, and both of those meanings are applicable and appropriate when we're discussing the poem. Okay, let's look at that first stanza. On another occasion, really sort of, it launches us straight into the action. The technique is actually in media res, where we're put straight into action. But on another occasion, makes this account feel like it's one of many events that has taken place for this soldier. And we get the note that we got sent out. Think about how, it reminds me of Exposure, this, in the way that we've got plural pronouns, soldiers seeing themselves identifying as part of a group, part of a sort of mini community that they kind of join together with their jobs. And we got sent out. I think that's interesting in terms of the poet really, the narrator, not the poet, justifying the actions, really trying to reinforcing the sense that this was a command. And it equally reminds us about sometimes this unthinking compliance, soldiers sort of going along with instructions, and the nature of that role means you can't question. It reminds me again of Charge of the Light Brigade, theirs not to reason why. They were sent out to tackle these looters. And then one of them, think about the anonymizing of this person that they shot, one of them. There's a real sense of them and us, isn't there? That sense of an enemy. In this colloquial expression of them legging it up the road, this person then is sort of dehumanized. They've just legged it up the road. It's this sort of unspecified person. And this refrain here that we get of probably armed, possibly not, has this real sense of uncertainty, doesn't it? They're probably armed, but unfortunately doubt has crept in because possibly they weren't. Carrying on with that idea of something unspecified, the soldier then refers to his comrades, somebody else and someone else. They're unspecified, or are they even forgotten? Once they're out of that war context, are those connections lost? But certainly we get here in this flashback sequence, they're all of the same mind. There's this collective agreement, and we're left wondering, is that something comforting or reassuring? You know, it wasn't just me. And all of them then open fire on this person who is running away from them. It's quite sudden, it's violent, it's quite shocking, and they're all letting fly. And letting fly has this sense of it being indiscriminate shooting. It lacks control. The three of a kind reference could remind us of card games and sort of suggest that this is more like play, really. It doesn't feel real. It's not real humans being shot down. And notice how he moves into the present tense, and this is because these traumatic images are here with him now. We get this repetition, and we get this sense that he can't expunge, he cannot get rid of these images from his memory. The PTSD is dominating his life now, and these very vivid images here of the shooter being shot and killed. Think again about, we've got more of this responsible sort of collective responsibility. There's a real sense of overkill. Didn't need to kill him a dozen times. And he's here on the ground sort of inside out. That sort of helps to add to that colloquial term, sort of colloquial style. And it's also sort of conveying the sense that the soldier is really struggling to express what he saw, what he experienced, to put that into words. The enjambment runs on into the next stanza, and this image, the image of pain continues. It runs on, it continues. The image of agony. And, you know, interesting juxtaposition from the vagary of sort of Inside Out to then the image of agony. We get the image of one of his mates going by, and then the body of this looter is thrown into the back of a lorry, and it's disposed of much like we would dispose of garbage. The language here is crude, it lacks humanity, it makes us think that this soldier is desensitized and no longer sees the enemy in terms of being a person. Our Volta comes here at the point, our turning point, that is, comes at the point where the soldier goes home, which is at the end of this stanza. So, you know, end of the event, except not really. So the blood shadow, and we can think about literally the imprint of this dead body, you know, the blood of this man that just stays there on the street, but equally a figurative, a metaphorical image of this stain that's in the soldier's mind. You know, every time he does this particular patrol, he's reminded of it, and it's inescapable, it's there. And then he's on home on leave. We get this abrupt caesura, this full stop midline, and suddenly we've got this abrupt movement from the war zone back home. And then we get this conjunction, but I blink. And he bursts, again, look in present tense, he bursts again through the doors of the bank. Sleep, and he's probably yarn, possibly not. Dream, and he's tore apart by a dozen rounds. So the present tense that we've been moved into shows that this inescapable reality for the soldier is that the time has passed, but these memories have not. He relives the moment again and again and again, and the repetition of this probably armed, possibly not, just reinforces the doubt and concerns he has that maybe this wasn't, this looter, you know, wasn't someone who needed killing at this point, and there's some grief and there's some guilt and remorse attached to this. So this is where we get the illusion here around Hamlet's soliloquy. In Hamlet by Shakespeare, he talks about sleep, perchance to dream, aye, that's the rub. So this is, just do a bit of research into Hamlet's soliloquy. He contemplates suicide in this. When he talks about sleep in the play, he's talking about killing himself, and, you know, would that be better? Would it be better to die than to have this constant trauma in his life? And so there is some sense in which this could be seen as an illusion, and maybe the soldier is contemplating ending this trauma by taking his own life. Equally, Macbeth murdered sleep, and therefore, you know, that image of doing something that then destroys your I don't know, that the kind of comfort that you might have in sleep, it's impacting every area of your life to the point where you can't even have a decent night's rest. So we then are sort of focused in on the coping mechanisms that many soldiers and generally other people who've experienced conflict, whether that's inner conflict or, you know, war zones, the idea of substance abuse, the drink and drugs won't flush him out. He's trying to cope, but these things are not working. They can't get rid of the memory, you can't expunge it. And again, present tense, he's here in my head, that alliterative line 25. When I close my eyes, we get the idea of, you know, this nightmarish land, that every existence where every time he even closes his eyes, he's sort of flashed back to that moment, dug in behind enemy lines. And we have this semantic field of war here to describe these memories which appear to be lodged and sort of cemented into him. You know, it personifies this this memory of this looter as being fixed there, immovable from his mind, not left for dead in some distant sun-stunned, sand-smothered land or 6 feet under in desert sand. So this sibilance, it's reminding us of the sand of the deserts in, you know, Iraq, Afghanistan. And these, he sort of feels, doesn't he, that there's a grudging and resentful thing that, you know, these acts, these events, they should have stayed there. They should have stayed in that war zone. This soldier should stay buried, literally, but also metaphorically. They should, you know, it shouldn't be coming back to haunt him, but near to the knuckle, here and now, his bloody life in my bloody hands. So we've got the reference, you know, literal blood on the hands, but also it could be used here as an expletive. This is a colloquial poem, the language is informal. And anger and almost resentment towards this enemy for causing this level of PTSD. So this inescapable guilt. And it really, you know, we talked about the Macbeth to murder sleep, but it equally reminds us of Lady Macbeth, out, damn spot. And, you know, having blood on your hands as being a sense of responsibility for a particular action. Okay, I hope this has been a useful overview of the poem and some of its kind of key elements. It works well compared to many poems, all of the war-based ones. I think it works really well with War Photographer. But any of the ones that really deal with soldiers can also be useful to look at as well. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye.